passengers' rights now. And Olumide Hwanya joins us as an aviation analyst. Thank you for coming on today. Well, I have heard people look at this and all shades of commentary, but some just think, okay, about time, but they rather approach it with cautious optimism. What do you think on this one?
Yeah, I quite agree too. It's time to have it. It's long overdue. The NC actually started this process sometime last year, and then by March this year, they had given brought out the executive summary for stakeholders to go through. The regulations are in place. What we look for tonight is the implementation, and what they're actually doing right now is to give some publicity to the Bill of Rights, and thereafter everything moves. But the optimism. We will be able. There's some issues. I feel.
What hitches do you see?
Let me start with the natural one.
The natural ones.
Yes, the natural ones with us here.
Okay.
What happens in the institution with the incessant power failure?
Oh.
That can delay flight. So who are you going to hang that on? Are you going to hang it on the airlines? What about the presidential movement? And everybody's asked to wait. I just asked, what do you do with those hours? Because sometimes when there was this harsh in Iceland and the airlines could not fly, they wanted to bring up the issue of the passengers' bill of rights, and that caused some issues. So these are the areas I want us to start addressing now before we go into full implementation. And again, I see again the airspace management agency. At times, you give startup when you're not ready to let them take off. Probably did some reason holding the aircraft at the holding bay there, and some of these are added. So these are areas.
So
they need to look
three
at
key areas you mentioned now.
Yes.
Presidential movement, power failure, and then given the startup movement
by the National Airspace Management Agency. That's an area I wanted to look at.
Should all of these are featured in that Bill of Rights, that where this happens, A, B, C, D, or E is expected?
Well, I think so. But you cannot begin to list everything. It's just that for now you can begin to plan when you have such things. Again, another thing that I saw in that thing is asking the airlines to refund by cash immediately. That might be difficult, because if someone buys online, how do you now come and say, okay, well, yes, I need to pay back, but must I pay back in cash?
Okay, well,
paid online.
Is it the same thing as funds transfer? Can they do
immediate
transfer?
They did that for the international. That law is put for the international airlines, but not for the domestic carriers. And the major challenge is the lack of interlining among the local carriers. Because if I cannot
interlining,
because if I cannot go on your airline, I should be able to put on another airline. And say, I think before Dr. Demori tried that before he left office, to see if the airlines could come together and have that agreement in place, but that did not work.
Because I remember they had it in the telecom sector while they were talking about co-location.
Yes.
There was a challenge at the time, but NCC came up. I can't remember what exactly was done and said, but it was bandied, and eventually they sorted that out. But now you say
they could not,
it's in the aviation.
SA tried to make the airlines come together to see how they can help each other once you have a problem, how they can put the passenger on another airline. That did not work out in the left of the, and I don't know whether they're still working on it.
Why don't the airlines do that?
To make these regulations?
Now, that is why we will have to look at the workability of this, because it wasn't as if, we never had any kind of bill of rights for air travelers, especially when they take to the skies. People are a little bit worried, because every time, and again, when they're actually being harassed, all your rights have been infringed upon, who do they really cry out to? Even though you have some existing agencies, do they truly do anything for such air passengers?
Yes, the NCA, let me start with the first part of the question. Who do they cry out to? They cry to the NCA. Now, the NCA is supposed to implement what the regulation says by coming to the aid of passengers. And I think in some cases, they've been able to come up. But I think the major problem is the ability to implement the regulations to the latter. That's the problem the NCA is having, because if you're too hard, you get the airlines down. And if you look at one of the fines, it's saying 5 million naira. Now, if you ask Ari to pay 5 million naira for violating one of the regulations, will you ask maybe a small airline like Overland to pay 5 million naira? That's another area I need they need to look at, because you're giving a blanket sum, but you're not looking at the size of the aircraft and the number of passengers that aircraft is carrying. So I think that's an area that needs to be worked on.
Well, that will amount to discrimination because, the law is the law. If you flout it, well, there should be one kind of penalty for everyone. If you want to grow big, be big, and well.
But the same law in the country as recognized some airlines are international, some are regional, and some are domestic.
But do they know their rights now? When I talk about they, we're talking about the air passengers.
Yeah.
Well, because these rights are not even displayed in most of Nigerian airports. I don't know. I haven't seen anyone even in Lagos airports. So I wouldn't know if there are others tucked away in some other tiny airports in the States. But in the Abuja airport and in the Lagos airport, I haven't seen anywhere where the rights of the passenger is being hung somewhere, so that some of those who do not know, well, would have known by now that they do have these rights, so that when any is infringed upon, you can actually call the NCA or call out any particular number.
The regulation says that the airlines must advertise it. The airports must have it in place for passengers to see. That has not, like you said, like you've observed, yes, it's not been so obvious for people, and that's what is coming up on Friday. Hopefully, if it takes place on Friday, the formal launching is meant to publicize and enlighten the Nigerian public. I just hope it comes out well. And because when you have regulations and I did not know my rights, it's of no use.
I hope they will take questions too about people's fears on this if they come up with this launch.
Well, they should, because I heard the Honorable Minister will be there. So I expect them to take questions and listen to people.
Because there are key things. In fact, all the major airports, Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kano, is not there.
But you see,
So,
let's get some things very clear to the passengers themselves. Before you're qualified to see your rights are violated, you must have bought a ticket. You must have a confirmed seat. And you must get to the airport early. And must be courteous to passengers. To passengers, airline users, and other airline staff and agents. Because all these things must be in place before you can come and talk about your rights being violated.
well, look at this. Airline Passengers Bill of Rights. The launch is coming up soon, and we're hoping that they will be able to take questions and concerns that people have raised. After all, that's how they get to do this copy testing. Well, it's a law already.
Yes, it is.
So they're going to eventually implement it.
Yes.
But what did they do when they write or draft all of this? Do they sound out experts or aviation persons like yourselves to see what do you think is missing from all of this?
Let me say that it took some time before the NCA came up with this Passengers Bill of Rights, and they did not just sit down in their conclave there. They called some people, used best practices compared with what other countries had in place, and they came up with it. Like I said, it has been ready since last year. Implementation is slow. That's a Nigerian factor. They said the airlines are weak, and they might probably not. They probably don't want to kill them by.
But they're killing the passengers.
Not by applying the law to the. Applying the law
They're
to the
strangulating us passengers. I mean,
yes.
They claim to be weak.
Yes, I think like I said, it came out last year. It's about a year now. I think that's enough time for the airlines to have braced for the new impact. And with the publicity coming up on Friday, I expect the passengers to now know what their rights are. That's why they are coming up with that program on Friday, so that everybody will know you have a right and this is what you are supposed to get. But like I said before you are qualified for that right, you must have bought a confirmed ticket. You must get to the airport early, check in your baggage, disclose the contents of your luggage, and be courteous to both passengers, agents, and other airline staff. All those things are necessary. If you have a rebate ticket or a free ticket, you are not going to benefit from the regulation.
Is this also going to be is this stipulated in this Bill of Rights? How passengers should conduct themselves?
Yes, it's in there. It's in there.
Because we also raised the fact that they're already applying this.
Surprisingly, I think the package tour operators, I mean, those who travel on holidays as a package travel, that's what those category of travelers were excluded. In other claims, they are part of the regulations. That is excluded now, and I think maybe NCL have to tell us why that it's.
Remember the no-show fee. The airlines applied their own Bill of Rights.
on the no-show fee.
they religiously stick to it. But the passengers have nothing to follow. They complain to the consumer section. Some don't even know if the consumer aspect exists, let alone complain to them. Yes, I can say that authoritatively, but even though some people tell you, well, it's there, we complain, and they're doing their best, but look, these things are sometimes neither here nor there.
Yeah, you see, the Nigerian process, I found out that it takes somebody to complain, and you don't end that complaining. You keep, in other places, yes, once you complain once, it takes off from there. But in the Nigerian claim, what you have to do is after complaining, you follow up. If you follow up and you get tired, maybe you probably have to engage a lawyer.
They could be there seeing you suffering that damage or injustice, and they don't say anything, so well, you haven't complained.
To say, like, I think what we should work towards now is implementation. Maybe once they start implementing and the first airline gets that sanction, maybe people don't say, no, well, this is for real. The regulation has been there. Like I said, I've not seen implementation. I've not seen any airline that's been fined or punished based on any part of the regulation. Probably after Friday, when the whole world is now notified that yes, Nigeria is ready, or is it join the other League of Nations in giving the appropriate bill of rights for all Nigerian passengers, maybe the sanctions will follow.
Because the other
but
one,
I said, like, okay,
yeah, sorry to butt in there, because the other one you raised, which is about the VIP movement, is something that we should also work on, because the rights of the air passenger as well, maybe as the airline operators. So many times Nigerians have actually been taken to neighboring Cotonou because of the VIP movement, and we all know the risk involved.
I know the VIP movement
and cost implication. Twofold?
It's twofold now. One is in the air, and the other one is the one that's on ground. Probably if they block the road and you, the passenger, cannot get to the airport, and even the pilot operating the flight are all delayed, because you know what happens is once they are coming, they probably have to block the road, and probably the aircraft has not left Abuja.
You know, that's why
we're all stopped.
That's why they say
these are areas that I said we need to look and address.
You know, when you mentioned that part you mentioned about the passengers conducting themselves right and all of those, we still go through the traffic. We go through that blockade. But when we don't get there early, we pay the no-show fee. So why should we also now be required to do all of those before we can say we have to latch onto our rights? So what's good for the good should be good for the gander.
I'm only just highlighting that these are areas that we need to look at.
Well, you've been in the sector. You've been in the sector. If you were to proffer a solution to this VIP problem in our airports, what would you be saying to them?
You see, for the VIP movement, it's not something you and I can decide. It's pure military and security thing. But what I ask them is, does this happen in other climes? Do they just
because we have to look at the frequency, because the frequency with which you hear VIP movement in the country is huge. It is worrisome. I mean, people have actually gone to other parts of the world to the extent that maybe in a week you've been flying for, let's say, 10 times in a week from states to states, and you don't get to hear VIP movement. But you come back home, the first aircraft you board, you hear VIP movement, and you held up.
Probably in those states we're talking about,
they don't have
the
VIPs.
only VIP they have is their Mr. President. In Nigeria, there's so many VIPs.
So in other words, then we have to look at the list of what makes VIP.
Or what makes a VIP, right? And at times, probably, again, the agencies might just use the VIP movement to hide some
but
of the
that is where the NCA comes in, because if unnecessarily the aircraft has refused to actually comply with some of these takeoff and perhaps landing where you should have. Well, I don't think anyone would want to stay up there in the skies, because they know, it's quite expensive to be held up there in the skies.
Yes, yeah.
So who pays the operator when they're held up there in the skies for VIP reasons, or maybe a delay in taking off?
When almost all the airlines are owing those agencies. So I can tell up to this moment, I've not seen any airline that said, okay, we are going to court to get remedies from any of these agencies who have not performed well. So because
it looks like a barter arrangement.
Yeah. So if you're owing, how can you come out and say yes, unwritten barter arrangement to cover your? So if you are owing on the other side, how will you come out and fight for right? Yes, you are very right. I think the airlines can make some complaints formally, maybe take it to court to get some remedies. But they really, where's the moral right to go when you know you have not met up your own part?
So they can't come to equity.
On the trade, they cannot come to equity, my brother.
Wow.
Again, another important thing I want us to know is that the Bill of Rights is under economic regulations, and the ministry, under the new policy, they are setting up a new unit, a new body, to the Nigerian Economic Regulatory Unit. It's going to be an independent body to handle economic regulations. That is where this new regulations and the parliament would be under. So I just look forward if they could quickly hasten that process to make that body come on board.
Yeah, but wait,
provided that body is not going to be under the ministry. It must be independent. But once it's made to be under the ministry, it's going to kill the effectiveness and the economic regulations. Because what we've noticed in the past was that NC has been so burdened by safety and security challenges and have left economic regulations to the detriment of passengers and the detriment of you and I.
Economic regulations such as what? The rights of passengers.
Yes, and
that's like the consumer section.
Yes. They're all under the NCA right now. But now, under the new policy, aviation policy coming out now, they're trying to pull the economic regulations out of it. And if this comes out, if it can be implemented as put in that policy, beautiful policy. But if it's going to be an appendage under the ministry, they would have